Do you know that Jacques Chirac, France's former president, once candidly acknowledged that France would be a third world country without Africa? And do you also know that most African countries deposit 50% of all their national income every year in the French treasury? Not only that, but France gets about $500 billion every year from Africa in the form of resources and financial control. Now combine all this and imagine what would happen if all this stopped. One man in Africa is now doing it, and his name is Captain Ibrahim Traore. Knowing that all the wealth France ever had was because of Africa, he decided to do something that could bring the French economy to its knees. Just recently, he launched a new currency called SIRA, which disturbs the control France has had in African countries. But what will it do, and how can it literally cripple the French economy? In this video, let's know about the whole story. For decades, African nations have been trapped in a system of financial control imposed by their former colonial rulers, particularly France. One of the most significant tools of this economic dominance has been the CFA franc, a currency system designed to keep African economies dependent on France long after they had gained political independence. The CFA franc was introduced in 1945 and continues to be used by 14 African nations, divided into the West African Economic and Monetary Union and the Central African Economic and Monetary Community. You see, despite political independence, these nations were forced to keep 50% of their foreign exchange reserves in the French treasury, meaning their financial wealth was effectively under French control. This system ensured that France maintained economic leverage over these African nations, dictating their financial policies and controlling their monetary decisions. Any attempt by African nations to set their own interest rates, devalue their currency, or make independent financial choices was blocked by France, keeping them in a perpetual cycle of economic dependency. Moreover, because the CFA franc was pegged to the euro, African exports became artificially expensive, making it difficult for these countries to compete in global markets. The system favored France's economic interests while stifling industrial growth in Africa, forcing nations to export raw materials rather than develop their own industries. However, a new wave of African leadership has emerged, determined to break free from this financial stranglehold. Among the most influential figures leading this charge is Captain Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso. Since taking power in 2022, Traore has taken radical steps to dismantle French economic control over Burkina Faso, paving the way for other African nations to follow suit. His most groundbreaking move has been the launch of Burkina Faso's new currency, SIRA, and the establishment of a national treasury deposit bank, both of which signal an end to the CFA franc's dominance in the country. The SIRA currency is designed to replace the CFA franc, allowing Burkina Faso to regain full control over its monetary policy, set its own interest rates, and adjust inflation independently. Unlike the CFA franc, which required African nations to deposit their financial reserves in French-controlled banks, the SIRA will be backed by Burkina Faso's own economy and natural resources. This means that for the first time in decades, Burkina Faso will no longer be obligated to hand over its wealth to France, breaking the chains of economic captivity. To further solidify this transition, Traore has also established a treasury deposit bank, which will store and protect Burkina Faso's financial reserves within the country, rather than keeping them in French banks. This is a crucial step toward financial sovereignty, as it ensures that the nation's wealth remains in Burkina Faso and benefits its own citizens rather than enriching foreign powers. And this ushers in a new era of African power and sovereignty. Burkina Faso, ditching the CFA franc system, challenges one of France's primary economic tools of control over Africa. For decades, the CFA franc allowed France to extract billions of dollars annually from its former colonies, giving it a steady supply of financial resources. French leaders, including former President Jacques Chirac, have openly admitted that France would be a third world country without Africa's resources and financial contributions. And now, by introducing the SIRA and removing its reserves from French control, Burkina Faso is striking directly at the heart of France's economic empire. The decision to abandon the CFA franc is not just an economic policy. It is a statement of defiance against neo-colonialism. Mali and Niger, two neighboring nations that also broke away from French military and political influence, are closely watching Burkina Faso's bold move and may soon follow suit. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. If these three nations successfully transition away from the CFA franc, it could trigger a chain reaction across West and Central Africa, leading other CFA nations to reject French financial control and introduce their own independent currencies. This would deal a devastating blow to the French economy, as it would cut off a major source of wealth that France has depended on for decades. However, the transition from the CFA franc to the SIRA is not without significant risks. Establishing a new currency requires a well-developed financial system, proper regulatory frameworks, and stability in exchange rates to prevent economic instability. If not managed carefully, the transition could lead to inflation, currency devaluation, and market uncertainty, which could disrupt Burkina Faso's economy in the short term. Additionally, France and Western powers are unlikely to allow this transition to happen smoothly. But Burkina Faso does not need permission, not this time. Ibrahim Traore has neutralized all the tools France could use to force Burkina Faso into not ditching the CFA franc. That's because he already knew France had a long history of using economic sabotage, political interference, and even military intervention to prevent African nations from achieving financial independence. Several African leaders who have challenged French economic dominance have faced assassination, coups, or Western-backed opposition. The fate of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya serves as a chilling example. Gaddafi attempted to introduce a gold-backed African currency, which would have freed African nations from the dominance of the US dollar and the euro. Shortly after announcing this plan, Gaddafi was overthrown and assassinated in a NATO-backed intervention, widely believed to have been orchestrated to prevent the emergence of a financially independent Africa. Similarly, Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso was assassinated in 1987 after calling for economic self-sufficiency and rejecting French-controlled debt. Patrice Lumumba of the Democratic Republic of Congo was brutally murdered in 1961 after trying to assert control over his country's vast mineral wealth. More recently, Tanzania's John Magufuli, who challenged foreign financial influence over his nation's economy, died under suspicious circumstances in 2021. The pattern is clear. African leaders who attempt to break free from Western financial dominance often face severe consequences. Given this history, Ibrahim Traore's bold economic reforms have placed him in great danger. By introducing the SIRA and cutting financial ties with France, he is challenging some of the most powerful interests in the world. If his plan succeeds, other African nations may follow suit, which would lead to the collapse of the CFA franc and a major economic crisis for France. However, if Traore fails, it could serve as a warning to other African leaders not to challenge Western financial systems. Western powers are already exploring ways to counter Burkina Faso's financial independence movement. One likely strategy is economic sanctions, which could attempt to cripple Burkina Faso's economy and force it back into the CFA system. Another possibility is diplomatic isolation, with France and its European allies cutting financial aid and trade agreements to put pressure on Traore's government. However, Burkina Faso is not standing alone in this fight. It is actively seeking alliances with non-Western nations such as Russia, China, and Venezuela, which are offering economic and military support to counteract Western influence. This move also ties into the broader global shift towards de-dollarization and multipolarity. Many BRICS nations, including South Africa, Nigeria, and Egypt, are reducing their reliance on the US dollar and Western financial institutions. Some of these nations are also considering gold-backed trade systems, which could further weaken Western financial dominance. If Burkina Faso's economic reforms succeed, It could accelerate the global shift away from Western-controlled financial structures. The road ahead remains uncertain, but one thing is clear. Africa is no longer waiting for permission to reclaim its financial sovereignty. The introduction of SIRA marks the beginning of a new era, where African nations dictate their own economic policies, control their own wealth, and break free from neo-colonial financial dependence. The future of the CFA franc, the West African economic system, and France's grip on Africa hangs in the balance. If Ibrahim Traore succeeds, which is more than a possibility now, his name will be remembered alongside the greatest revolutionaries of Africa. He would be remembered as a leader who fulfilled Muammar Gaddafi's dream and launched an African currency that proved to be the last nail to France and Western imperialists. What do you think? If all African countries launch their own currencies and end resource supply to France, what will happen? Isn't it true that African resources developed Europe and made it what it is today? In the comment section right below, share the scale of development in Africa if all its resources and wealth are used for its own welfare, instead of benefiting Europe. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.